So what's up, guys? It's been a few weeks, but I finally have gotten around to finally putting out something for this channel. And in kind of, I guess, going along with what happened with the A's, we now see a potential happening in hockey with the Coyotes. Now, I'm going to be honest, I'm not that much of a hockey fan. I don't really watch it as enthusiastically as a lot of people do. But, I get the concepts and everything, and I try to, and just like any sport, I follow it along and try to, make heads or tails of what's still going on in the sports world. Because, I do watch a lot of other sports YouTubers. I also, have access to the internet and can actually look stuff up. But if I obviously make a mistake or or a misjudgment or something like that, or if you just think that my predictions of this are just way off, feel free to leave a comment. Keep it respectful, no bigotry, or you will be banned from the page. I don't put up with bullshit, okay? The Arizona Coyotes there was about 3 proposals that were up for public vote. All of them were voted down. One of these proposals included a $2.1 billion arena proposal that obviously would have created put an arena, I believe it was in Tempe, if I'm not mistaken, which would have made it possible for them to build an arena and surrounding kind of entertainment district around the arena. That was voted down because very obviously in a situation like that, a team is most likely wanting the public to at least foot half of it, if not even more of it. We're seeing, for instance, for that $1.5 billion stadium that I think that they're planning on building in Las Vegas, half of that, or a quarter of that, is going to probably end up being paid by the A's organization, and part of it's going to be funded by public money. But considering that, there's already a lot of money tied up with, hotel taxes and stuff like that, because it's Vegas, it's probably not going to hurt the people too much. But, in a place like Arizona, they don't necessarily have all those luxuries, and the people there are very obviously a little bit more tight with their money, and they don't want to have to spend extra for a team that they may or may not even support, or may or may not even go see, or maybe they just don't like hockey in general. And that's the problem with public funding, is that a lot of that comes from the taxpayer, whether they like hockey or not, or whether they like baseball or not, or whether they like football or not. You get the point. So now, because of this, there is quite definitely the possibility of the Coyotes moving, and not just moving within the city, but potentially moving out of state. If you recall, they, back in the 90s, moved from Winnipeg to Phoenix, and have played there since the mid-90s. So we're just going to kind of go over some potential cities that have been talked about for relocation, and I'm going to kind of just pick them each apart and basically pick my most logical cities for relocation, and my most logical cities that will actually probably get an expansion team. So here we go. Starting first with Houston. Now, Houston is a city that often gets brought up when it comes to relocation, particularly with the Coyotes. the new team that could that if the Coyotes or even expansion team comes to Houston, essentially I think that team would probably likely end up playing at the Toyota Center, the Rockets' home arena, or the city of Houston could technically opt for a brand new arena, though I think Houston would likely more just opt for the renovation, because unlike a few cities like Atlanta, for example, Houston doesn't really have as much to throw around. They're not really in the business right now of trying to, remodel or, rebuild a stadium. Basically, they're not in the process of building a new stadium. I mean, for instance, NRG is what, 21 years old this year. The Toyota Center about the same age. They're not gonna tear it down. I mean, if it was like maybe built in 91, built in the 80s, I could see the reason why they'd want to build a new arena, but I think the Toyota Center would likely probably have quite a few good years left in it, before maybe the NHL and or NBA actually said, hey, you guys probably need a new arena, let us kind of help pay for at least part of it, that's type of stuff. But for the most part, I think that they could probably just renovate the Toyota Center. I don't see how that would be a problem. They could basically keep the name the Coyotes if they wanted to. This is like the only city I think that's possible that they could do that. They could change it to something that more represents the city or the state of Texas, or even even something that even represents Houston's being a space city. I mean, they've done it with the Astros, they did it with the Rockets. They could also go the route kind of like what the NFL team did and call them something that's more related to, that represents the state of Texas. If you recall, there was an old American Hockey League team back in the 70s called the Houston Aeros. Obviously, the AHL merged with the NHL in 1979. So, it's one of those things that, who knows, maybe they decide to go with that name, maybe they decide to go with the Coyotes, maybe they decide to go with an entirely different name and, all out, just go all out. Who knows? It's just speculation. Don't really have much to go on for the city of Houston. They are just a city that gets brought up a lot. So the next city on my list is Atlanta. Now, as you recall, Atlanta lost the Thrashers in 2011. They were only around for, maybe about 15 years or so. So in 2011, the Thrashers moved to Winnipeg and became the Jets. A lot of people talk about Atlanta as well when it comes to relocation or expansion. Atlanta, like Houston, has a market for it, and the team could move right on into State Farm Arena. Again, you might need some renovation before that could happen, because State Farm Arena is only like 20 years old itself. But then again, we also have to take into consideration that Atlanta is one of those cities that's in the habit of like replacing their stadiums every like 20 years or so, much faster, pretty much half the time that most stadium life on average lasts. I mean, you saw it with Turner Field. They moved out of there after 20 years of operation. They've now moved to Cumberland. You saw it with the Georgia Dome. Hell, even before that, when in the time of multi-purpose stadiums, the Concrete Donuts, the Atlanta sports teams did not stay in the in Atlanta Fulton County Stadium for very long, only about 25 years before they built the separate ballparks or separate stadiums in the mid 90s, and then those again lasted about 20 years, and then they opted out for it. So Atlanta's kind of in the business of doing that. So there's also a very real possibility that even in the event that they get a hockey team there, they could easily just basically say, okay, we're going to build a separate hockey arena, or we're just going to bulldoze State Farm Arena and just rebuild an arena for the NBA and NHL team right on the same exact, plot of dirt. But yeah, it just kind of seems like that's something that happens. Again, the Atlanta Falcons, Atlanta FC, they just got, Mercedes-Benz Stadium a few years ago to replace the Georgia Dome. The Braves, did get Truist Field in Cumberland. So maybe, yeah, if the NHL team does consider a move, consider going out to Atlanta, there's also even a real possibility that maybe they might move into the Cumberland suburbs. I mean, Cumberland is kind of an up-and-coming town that's kind of away from all the, hustle and bustle and the loud city life. And it's, a place that people can commute to easily, especially if they do live in, like, some of the suburbs in and around Atlanta. So it's very possible they could do that. Even in the case if they do, like, say, bulldoze State Farm Arena, they could still put a new arena out there. I'm not saying it has to be on the same plot of dirt, just saying that Atlanta has a lot of different options to go with if that does happen. So, yeah. And then as far as the team name, I feel that if they did move there, that they would probably I feel like they would change the name to the old Thrashers emblem and name, but I also do believe that it is possible they could go with something else. Maybe they do stick with the name Coyotes, but I kind of highly doubt that. Coyotes is kind of more associated with being from the Southwest, so yeah, I don't really see that happening. I say if they move to Atlanta, it's definitely the Thrashers name that they probably bring back. Maybe they go with something else. Maybe they get a new stadium. Maybe they stay at State Farm. Who knows? Point being is that I don't really think that Atlanta's got a lot of options, but I really doubt that if the team moves there that they keep the Coyotes name. So our next city on this list is that gets talked about that used to actually have an NHL team back in the day was Quebec City. Now, this may be a bit before some of y'all's time, so some of the older viewers might actually remember the old Quebec Nordiques who played in the NHL from 1979 to 1995. Following the merger of the World Hockey Association into the NHL. The Winnipeg Jets also used to be play in that organization before moving to Phoenix to become the problematic focus of today's video. But then the city got them back when the aforementioned Thrashers moved from Atlanta to Winnipeg. So, in a real twist of cruel irony, the Yotes may not find their way back to Winnipeg, but there is still a pretty good chance that they might even find a way back to Canada and just revive, say, the old team in Quebec. So that's an entirely possible thing that could happen. But yeah, no, the old Quebec Nordiques, they used to play in the WHA from about 1971 or 2 to about 1979 before they ended up becoming an NHL team. So they've got a very storied history there in Canada. Easily about 25 years there before they ended up being uprooted and moved to Phoenix, and before that just screwed everything up for the modern day. So yeah, another good thing that really is good about Quebec City and why I think the NHL might even push for it is because, number one, it's Canada, it's a hockey nation, and Quebec City has hosted a team before. They could easily support a market for another team. They obviously did it for 25 years. They could easily do it again. Not only that, it is like, basically the halfway point between Ottawa and Montreal, and or maybe my geography is a little bit off on that, but basically it's about the same distance from Ottawa to Montreal, I think, and Montreal to Quebec City. Again, maybe I have the geography a little turned around, but point being, it means that one is not encroaching upon the other's territory that much, And I think that there's a lot of support that would come from Quebec City. I mean, I think that maybe you might want to go for a slightly lower capacity if you know do bring a team there, but there's not really much of a reason to build a new arena. They literally just built the Videotron Center just not too long ago in order to try to lure a team back to Quebec. The Nordiques used to play at the old Pepsi Coliseum, but that's pretty old. It's been there for decades now. I just don't see them going back to the old digs. Not when you've got a brand new shiny new toy that's like right in front of you, ready to go, ready to take a team in. I think that would be more likely. I think that's a city that the NHL is really going to push for. I think eventually the Yotes are going to go for it, but who knows? We'll see what happens. The Nordiques, also moved in 1995, if you remember, from Winnipeg to Denver to become the Colorado Avalanche. But if they do get a team back in Quebec, I see them going back to the old Nordiques name. There's no way they're keeping the Coyotes. There's just no way in hell. That's kind of more of an American Southwest thing. That's more associated with the western part of the U.S. I don't see that the Coyotes name sticking if they go back up to Canada. There's just no way in hell. And then another city that also gets brought up lately, especially lately, for whenever it comes down to like relocation, expansion for teams and stuff like that, is Salt Lake City, Utah. Now, they already have the Utah Jazz, which, by the way, I've always thought that was kind of a stupid name for the basketball team. That's more associated with New Orleans. They moved from New Orleans a couple decades ago and took the name with them. That was just so stupid. Like, Utah is known for all these beautiful backdrops like Zion and freaking arches and beautiful landscapes, the Great Salt Lake, for Christ's sake, the Rocky Mountains. There's so many great landmarks around there, and then they kept the Jazz. Not only that, Utah is also like renowned for being like the home of Mormonism, and so which is often associated with the beehive symbol, which is why it's called the Beehive State, and why they've got why the beehive has long been on their police vehicles and their government vehicles and on their their flags and government documents and all kinds of things like that. That's what that's associated with. Like, they have a minor league team there called the Salt Lake Bees. They couldn't have named the basketball team like the Buzz or something like that. Literally same 4 letters. You just have to it's literally still 4 letters. All you have to do is just change the name. They literally just could have been the Buzz instead of the Jazz. But both have 2 Z's at the end. Both are 4 letters. It would have sounded really nice. It would have gone great for Utah's history as being a Mormon state. They could have easily done that. It would have been way better. But Utah is just not a place known for jazz music, so I've never really gotten that or gotten over that. But if they do get an NHL team, maybe that is something that they could redeem themselves by calling the team. Maybe they go with, the name of the Utah Buzz. Who knows? Maybe they go with a name like the Hive, or better yet, a good name that they could have named them, the Stingers. That sounds like a really good name for a hockey team. You could go call them the Utah Stingers or the Salt Lake Stingers. In fact, I actually like the city name Salt Lake Stingers. That would make a great fucking team name. But yeah, maybe they decide to keep the Coyotes, as they do, as that is still considered kind of like the American Southwest area, and they do inhabit, that area because it's still pretty much desert. They do inhabit the American West and Southwest, so I think that so they could still call themselves the Utah Coyotes or the Salt. I think that in that case that you would have to call them the Utah Coyotes, because I don't think that Salt Lake Coyotes really rolls off the tongue as great. So Utah Coyotes, the Utah Yotes, as a shortened name, that people would love that. So either one I think would work. They got a lot of options as far as the team name goes. As far as like the where they'd play, they'd probably end up having to play at Vivint Arena at least for a couple of years. It would be kind of small for hockey. It's only got like a 14,000 listed capacity for hockey when hockey actually is played there. And, I know that Winnipeg plays in something about that size as well, but that one kind of fits for the city, and it would definitely be in the bottom tier of seating capacity. But to be quite honest, it might also actually work for Salt Lake City as well. Especially, if they can, until they can get a good team together, and develop a very loyal following of fans, which, again, I think that could happen. But even then, I think you would still want to keep the capacity fairly low. But I doubt that they would stay forever at Vivint Arena. My Vivint Arena is old. It's as old as I am. I was born in 1991. The arena was built in 1991. So both of us are turning 32 this year. Holy crap. I think that it's more likely that with the average, it's fallen pretty much in that average lifespan of a stadium, and I just don't see that arena sticking around for any more than maybe about another 10 years or so. So most likely that in that case, the city of Salt Lake, the state of Utah would probably end up having to enter negotiations with the Yotes and the NHL to build a brand new arena to house both the NHL and NBA teams if they move. Now they could get it definitely probably for the Utah Jazz, but right now that's kind of what the biggest contention is for keeping the Yotes in Phoenix has been the whole issue over the stadium, because right now they just don't have a good following. They haven't had a whole lot of support. They kind of have been in a very similar situation that the A's are in, bad ownership, etc. So I think that might be a hard sell. But then again, it's if the partnership includes the basketball team playing there, which is the one time when roommates does actually work, then I could see that happening. But on their own, it would be really hard for them to get a new arena, and really hard for them to sell it to the state of Utah, the city of Salt Lake. So they'd have to enter into some sort of like negotiated shared property deal with the basketball team. Otherwise, I just don't see an arena easily getting built. Yeah, I think that if that does happen, that the NHL team would definitely have to at least play in Vivint, probably for the first couple of seasons. But I definitely think that would work for them. The next one on the list is Kansas City. Now, I don't know why, but I just don't see this happening. Kansas City, they've tried to get a basketball team there, and it's just Kansas City is just not built, not really a basketball or hockey themed city. Maybe they might be able to get a hockey team there. Maybe I'm just kind of pissing, taking the piss here on Kansas City, but they have tried to have an NBA team and even an ABA team there. I mean, how bad it is when you couldn't even keep an ABA team there, or even any sort of like NBA development league team there. It's because it's just not doing good. Maybe they could have a slight market for hockey because it is Middle America, and but the Middle America part that I see that normally is big into hockey is places like North Dakota, Minnesota, those places like that. Those people are into hockey. Not in Kansas, not so much. You're in the middle of literally Middle America. There's nothing out there. It's humid during most of the year. It snows like absolute crap during the winter time. Maybe they could have that. Maybe they just do a fucking Field of Dreams thing, and they just carve a hockey rink out of the wheat and the corn out there during the winter, and they just play there. But I just don't see that being a hockey town. I'm sorry. Maybe I'm being a little too critical, too harsh on the city of Kansas, City. But yeah, no, it's just very stereotypical middle America, good old folk who like their baseball and their football teams. They already got the Royals, they already got the Chiefs. The Royals, yeah, they've struggled a bit, but that's largely due to the fact that they just haven't been a good team for the last 5 or 6 years. So they're struggling with attendance, but if they just got like a really good rookie pitcher or something like that, or a couple of good base runners or something like that, they could probably easily start at least winning half of their games again, maybe actually make a playoff run, and that might start drawing attention back to the team. They're also in the middle of trying to get a new baseball stadium built in downtown Kansas City. The Chiefs are a football dynasty right now in the NFL. They are considering building a new stadium like I said, they're thinking about building a new stadium for the Royals in downtown, potentially giving a modern renovation to Arrowhead. They do have the Hy-Vee Arena, which is right along the river, but the Missouri River. And there are a couple other arenas that could probably even be renovated and used for hockey. Again, I think Kansas City would have a similar issue that Salt Lake would have. You'd probably have to go with a lower tiered seating capacity, so it could work, but I just don't see it. Even if they do, I doubt that they would build a new arena anytime soon. There's just not much. There's just not the resources there to develop that. Unlike cities like Atlanta, Las Vegas, like New York or LA, they don't really have a whole lot of that extra money to throw around out in middle America. And unlike, like a city like Quebec, they aren't, they don't already have a brand new stadium ready to go. They've got a lot of older arenas, and even if they renovate it, that's still going to easily probably cost like $500 million. Like I said, at that point, it's like, yeah, it's cheaper, but you're better off just kind of half-assing it. So who knows? But the other issue that I see is the fact that they have the St. Louis Blues that are literally just across the state, and I highly doubt that the NHL would want to go for another gamble on another city that close, literally only a few hours away. So that'd kind of be like putting an NHL team in like San Francisco or Sacramento, when you've got, when you already have the Sharks in San Jose. I'm not saying that couldn't work, because the difference there is that, California probably could still support at least one more NHL team, but I just don't see it either. It'd be like trying to put another sports team, another hockey team in, say Tacoma or whatever in comparison to Seattle. I don't know. There's probably, I'm probably going to sound hypocritical when I start hitting a couple other cities on this list, but it's, I don't know. It's the difference is that these different cities I could see could actually have the loyal following already and could actually be ready to go with that. Kansas City, I just don't see it. So maybe that's just my personal opinion, but, I just don't see that actually happening. There's also there's occasionally some talks too about putting a team in Hamilton, Ontario, where obviously they have the Tiger Cats of the Canadian Football League. I'm not really so sure about this one. I know they have a couple of minor league sports teams like the Ontario Hockey League. They have the Hamilton Bulldogs. The Canadian Premier League has Forge FC that plays there. They have a basketball team called the Honey Badgers, which is just kind of a silly name, I think, for a basketball team, in my opinion. It's kind of cute for a baseball team, and it works, but for anything else, it's just kind of silly. But I highly doubt the NHL would relocate or even expand a team to Hamilton. It's just too close to Toronto. It's like 41 miles away from the Scotiabank Center, and it would take away from the Maple Leafs market. And unlike cities like New York and Los Angeles, I just don't think there's enough support or reason why the Toronto Buffalo area would, need another team there. It's about, like I said, it's also about the same distance from there to Buffalo as it is to Toronto, so that would end up really conflicting with, the Sabres. Maybe it would make a really good, intense rivalry there. That's really the only reason I could see why they would put a team in Hamilton. So yeah, and some people will probably also say, well, what about Quebec City, Montreal, and Ottawa? And a lot of people just don't seem to realize that, they're actually that Canada's a lot more spread out than you think, even in the East, especially even in the East, on the eastern side of it, the eastern coast of it. But even with that said, it's just a very spread out country. Most of the population centers are on the southern end of Canada. And and that's why cities like Winnipeg, Calgary, Edmonton, Vancouver, Toronto, Montreal, even Ottawa can support teams there. But yeah, no, it's just Hamilton, I think, is just too small. It's kind of more of a suburb of kind of Toronto in a way. It's really too close to the city center, so I just highly doubt that the NHL would take a gamble on that. Not only that, I think a lot of people just kind of do forget that actually how far apart that Ottawa, Montreal, and Quebec City are from each other. I mean, compared to a lot of like cities in the U.S. where they are sometimes further away, than people think. Ottawa is about 138 miles from Montreal. Montreal itself is 170 miles from Quebec City. Toronto is 236 miles from Ottawa. So, they have actual reasons to kind of have separate teams, separate markets, and whatnot. And a lot of times it isn't easy getting from place to place. A lot of times you have to fly, especially during the winter. So, because a lot of those roads are just, not sustainable to drive on all the time during the winter time. So, that's also what kind of makes the disconnect seem even larger. Each of those trips is going to easily be by about 2 to 4 hours by car, but Hamilton, it's just too close. Hamilton is a good development league city, but, as I just can't see them ever getting a team there, like a professional sports team. Not only that, but the new arena would have to be built. Would have to literally be built. They'd have to build an actual new stadium for them, because currently their current arena has I don't know, 2,000 capacity. That's way too small. Even by the current Yote standards, they wouldn't even want to think of moving into something even smaller than what they're already in. It's like going from basically a dorm room to a closet. That's and after already being kicked out of their nice lavish mansion, they have to go kick it with their roommates in a dorm room, and then to go to Hamilton, where they'd have to probably spend at least a couple of years playing in practically a storage closet. They're not going to go for that. I just don't see it, and I don't see the NHL ever gambling with that. That's just going to be a no. But yeah, like I said, Hamilton, it's just too close. It's good for development leagues, but I just don't see it. If they ever were to do something like that, they'd probably end up having to be roommates with the Maple Leafs, even if it was just on a temporary basis. That may work for football, but even the Jets are looking into getting their own stadium potentially. It's only been used on a temporary basis for the MLB when, say, like the Yankees or the Mets had to crash on each other's couches for, a season or two because of renovations. I just, like I said, I just don't see it. The NBA, it's kind of worked with the Lakers and Clippers, but it's always just kind of been a bit tacky to me. And now the Clippers are going to be getting their own new arena in Inglewood near SoFi Stadium, but I just don't think it would work for the NHL. Roommates already just kind of suck when it comes to sports, and one is always going to be shadowing the other. Like the Clippers shadowed the Lakers for so many years. Even this year, the Clippers did really well, and even the Lakers have overshadowed them even there. So, yeah, I highly doubt that the NHL is going to even consider a team in Hamilton, not even for expansion. I just don't think it happens. Now, this one isn't really on the list, but this is the city that I live in, and so there's definitely some bias here. But a team that I think should at least get could have an NHL team relocation or expansion is Portland, Oregon. We already have the Winterhawks here of the Western Hockey League. They play at the old Veterans Memorial Coliseum, which was the old Trailblazers' home. They play some of their games at Moda Center. Right next door. They have a very dedicated and loyal following. They've actually had a ton of success over the years. They actually won a championship about 10 years ago. And some of their fans still won't shut the fuck up about it. But they've always just been a pretty consistently good team. And I just think that it would just be great to have a team here in general. It would definitely help Seattle with travel. It would give that nice Pacific Northwest rivalry between Seattle and Portland. Portland also already has the Timbers in the MLS, who have been marginally successful and have a very loyal fan base. Like, regardless of whether they win or lose, there's always going to be people supporting the Timbers. They usually sell out most of their games. Even during the times they don't sell out games, they're still packing, the stands with at least like 16 to 18,000 people out of like 25,000. So yeah, they've got a pretty. So Portland's a city that can have some pretty loyal fans if you treat them right, and you actually put the effort in. The Blazers, they've just been okay the last couple of years, but win or lose, they actually do have a pretty devoted fan base. I just went to a game about 2 months ago, and even though the season has just been absolute crap, they still drew a huge crowd, and I feel that a hockey team would do the same. In fact, I know that they have been trying to get a MLB team here too, just up the river in Northwest Portland, and I'm all in favor of that. So I think it could happen. But I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm actually going to say that I think that the NHL would probably be more likely to end up coming to Portland first rather than an MLB team. I think hockey would just do really well up here in Portland. We're a winter weather city. It gets really cold in December through February, sometimes even early March. I mean, good God, we had friggin' some bad ice storms in the last 2 years in a row, and during weather like that, people, they just want to go where it's warm. They want to catch a nice game inside or something like that. That's when you actually see the Blazers games and stuff like that doing really well. Very obviously, like I mentioned, the Winterhawks have a very dedicated and loyal following. So, I don't see any reason why that wouldn't be a thing. So, yeah, I just think a team would really do well here. I do think that if they do bring an NHL team to Portland, that they would probably most likely play at the Moda Center. There is a possibility that they could build a new arena on the very same exact site as the Vet, but either way, I don't see the Vet surviving. The Vet's really old. I think it was built in the 70s or whatever, and it's just really showing its age. I don't think a renovation would really do any good for the Vet. I really don't. It's just they might have to renovate the Moda Center a bit, but if they do build a new arena, it would likely be on the very same spot as the Vet or Moda Center right now at the Rose Quarter. I highly doubt, though, the Yotes will move to Portland, but I think that it would make a very good expansion city. As for the team name, I think the team should stay the Winterhawks, though, given the continued controversy surrounding Native American cultural appropriation, there's always a chance that the NHL could opt for the city to, have a more appropriate name, and maybe they would call themselves something like the Steelheads or the Volcanoes or the Cascades or something. Actually, no, the Cascades, I don't know. I mean, yeah, they have the Avalanche, but I don't know, Cascades, does that really incite, intimidation? Like Volcanoes does, but, I just don't, Steelheads definitely does, but I just don't see the Cascades, thinking about that now. Yeah, maybe that wouldn't really work. I don't know. Out of all the cities that I've named, I really do think, though, the most likely cities for relocation are going to be Atlanta or Quebec City. I could maybe see Salt Lake getting the team out of closer proximity. It's still about the same travel to Vegas when they play each other, and that would definitely cut travel time between them and Denver. Certainly would be for them in Seattle. Even more so if Portland were to get a team. It would just be a nice central location out there, but I just don't think the NHL is. I think the NHL would be more likely to look at Salt Lake and Portland for expansion rather than relocation. That's just my personal opinion. Like I said, I think that moving them to Salt Lake City would still come with its own fair share of problems because essentially, you're gonna still need a new arena because Vivint Arena is just so old. Not nearly as old as Veterans Memorial Coliseum in Portland, but definitely still old for average standards. And, it just doesn't have the modern amenities that a lot of these new arenas have. So I think if they were to do that, they'd kind of find themselves in the same problematic position that they are in Phoenix. That's why I just don't see them really getting the relocation there. Expansion team maybe. But I just don't see them doing that, especially since that is like the biggest thing right now. There's no way in hell that the Coyotes are wanting to, are wanting to basically have another temporary home for, 1 or 2 seasons while a new arena is built. There's just no way. They would want to move right into something that's ready to go, that's not too old. That's why I'm saying State Farm Arena. Even though it's 20 years old, but even then Atlanta would probably want to build a new stadium, and I don't know how long that, the Coyotes would want to, I don't know if the Coyotes would want to take a gamble on something like that because, if they end up only playing at that arena for even if it's for another 10 years, it's still, they're going to be going year to year feeling like, okay, is this like the year we're going to get that we move into our permanent home, or are we going to have to move again? Or, there's going to be a lot of uncertainty with that. Definitely more uncertainty if they were to move to Salt Lake City, but they would still face some similar problems if they did that in Atlanta. Houston, I just don't see it happening. I mean, they could, but even if they did, I think that, again, they would have to reapproach the idea of a new arena in probably a few more years. And why would they do that when the Videotron Center was literally just built a few years ago? It's ready to go. It's brand new. It's got modern amenities. It's perfect for hosting a new team. It was built largely to lure a team back to Quebec City. I think that they take the gamble with that. I think that's what the NHL is going to push for them. I don't know. That's just my personal opinion. But I think that, that they're far more likely to take a gamble on Atlanta or Quebec City. Canada especially, again, because Canada is just such a hockey country. I mean, they literally have the Canucks, the Canadiens, and the Maple Leafs, just to name a few teams there. 3 teams that literally have something that best represents, their country. Obviously, the Leafs because of the maple leaf on the flag, and they are known for their fantastic maple syrup. The Canadians because no shit, it's Canada, the whole Canada thing. And then, of course, the Canucks, which is a nickname for Canadians up there. Bringing a team back to Quebec City and reviving the old Nordiques name, which literally is French for Northerners or Northmen. That just fits with the theme of Canada being the land of the Great White North. So I think that would probably that would be what they would go with. I just don't think that they're gonna. But yeah, I think I'm gonna go with Atlanta or Quebec City will be the most likely to get the relocation of the Yotes. Probably will not keep the Coyotes name because, like I said, that's kind of themed more towards the American Southwest, like Phoenix. If they go to Atlanta, I think they're going to bring back the Thrashers name and logo. If they go with Quebec City, it will be the old Nordiques name and logo. Honestly, I think they will probably move back to Canada. If I actually had to put my money on it, I would put my money on Quebec City because, if they got to move back to... I think if they move back to Canada, if relocation actually does become official, which I'm pretty certain that it will, I mean, the Coyotes... the Coyotes have had a terrible time in the desert. I really think that move in the 90s from Winnipeg was an absolute mistake. I really think that it just screwed everything up for the future because, they should have just stayed where they were and toughed it out. But, the 90s were just, they were a weird and different time. Maybe Phoenix was a nice city back in the day, but that seemed viable and suitable and perfect for sports. But now it's kind of aging, and no one really gives a crap about them anymore. I mean, it's kind of like their population down there. It's largely, retirement communities. People are just not as, into hockey down there, as you'd expect. Whereas, meanwhile, Vegas is kind of overshadowing Phoenix. It's, a very up and coming. I mean, Vegas has always been that up and coming city that was always like pushing for the next like biggest like mark itself or something. Whether it was gambling, prostitution, whether it was building these fancy hotels with like all the lights and the lavishness and the just abrasive concert events and stuff like that they hold there. It does, whether it's sports, they're always looking for that next major tourist cell because they are a tourist city. That's literally what makes Vegas Vegas. And to be quite honest, I feel like it's like the two talented siblings, but like one is like much more talented and has a more storied career than the other does. Vegas is basically the Peyton Manning to Phoenix's Eli. So there's not much success. There's not much in the way of support. They got kicked out of their old arena and had to move into a 5,000 seat arena that they share with the University of Arizona college hockey team. It's just a sad situation. And then with the Vegas Golden Knights just not too far away, I just don't think that there's really ever going to be a necessity to have a team in Phoenix, whether now or ever again. And I kind of think that that's what the NHL was thinking when they actually expanded to Vegas. It's just a better market. Gambling is legal there. Prostitution is legal there. It's a major tourist destination. Phoenix just doesn't have a whole lot going for it. It's lovely in the spring when baseball comes there in March. They got, they've got basically golf that comes to Scottsdale once in a while, but it's just not a hockey town. I kind of feel that Arizona, honestly, as far as pro sports, may only be suited for baseball, basketball, and football. And, even then, there's occasional talks about those teams relocating. It's just kind of a sad situation. It's kind of like the situation it's just kind of like the situation in Oakland in a way, with Vegas taking the A's and the Raiders. Now Vegas, is taking away some of that gusto that Arizona used to be known for. So yeah, it's just it especially in terms of like market availability and support from Arizona, and has just kind of replaced it as the premier sports city in the desert, frankly. I think Portland, Salt Lake City, and Houston are likely to be potential places for expansion, but I don't think they get the Yotes. Atlanta and Quebec City, definitely relocation potential, but if I had to put my money on it, I say Yotes go to Quebec City, and then maybe Atlanta, Houston, maybe even Austin, Texas too. Maybe they get a team, or San Antonio, or maybe maybe the NHL might take a gamble on all three too. Who knows? But I think the problem is, but I don't really think that having too many NHL teams in Texas would probably work either. So who knows? But Salt Lake City, definitely could see them getting an expansion team, but that's largely due to the fact that they'd have to build they'd have to be like Quebec City and build an arena to lure a team, or a team would have to expand there, play at the Vivint Arena for a couple of years, then move into the new digs. Portland, again, I think they could get an expansion city. Could be an expansion team city, but they definitely will not keep the Veterans Memorial Coliseum. The Vet is just horribly run down and old. They probably have to renovate the Moda Center, maybe play there for a couple of years. Maybe they build a new arena on the exact same dirt in Portland, or maybe they opt to put it somewhere else in the metro area. Who knows? But definitely, definitely those would. I would put Salt Lake City and Portland and Houston in my list of likely to get an expansion team rather than relocation. Atlanta probably will get will be on my list of relocation, but maybe possibly expansion. I think definitely the Yotes are going to Quebec City. And then as far as Hamilton goes, that's one is just going to be not only a no, but a hell no. There's no way in hell that they're ever going to take a gamble putting a team in a town like Hamilton. I'm sorry. I just don't see it. I'm sorry, Hamiltonians, or whatever you call yourself up there, but you're not getting your own professional NHL team. You're just too close to Toronto. You know, you're better off just being a Maple Leafs fan at that point. But yeah, that's also just my opinion. If you feel like maybe I'm way off base or something like that, if there's something I could have added, please let me know in the comments. Again, keep them respectful. Don't be an asshole. If you're a bigot, if you're a racist or a bigot, you know, a homophobe or a transphobe, you will be blocked and your comment will be deleted. This is, you know, if you want to, you know, go, you know, be an asshole, go do it on Truth Social or something. But this is not going to be the place to do it. But if you like sports and you like this video, go ahead and give it a like, comment, subscribe. Any suggestions would be great. But yeah, as far as things go, that's going to do it for now. So I'm Red Pagan Nicole, and this has been Red Pagan Sports. Until next time.